A Brighter Sun, Chapter 4. The majority of Chinese in Trinidad are shopkeepers or launderers. Either one is prosperous business for them, and with typical Oriental attitude, they stick to selling goods or washing clothes in preference to anything else. They began to trickle into the island in the latter half of the 19th century. Those who prospered sent for their families and encouraged others to come. They scattered all over the colony, in the villages and in the towns, in remote country districts and seaside resorts. The key to their success lay in hard work and the very little with which they could make themselves comfortable. Newcomers would work with an established shopkeeper for a number of years, then go into another district and open up their own shop or laundry. In Trinidad, there is a shortcut to identity. All Americans, for instance, are known as Joes. East Indians are hailed as Ram or Singh, or some other common name until an association is formed and introductions made. Though this method of identifying unknowns is not used among the middle or upper class, it is a custom of the working class to address strangers in this manner. In the same way, all Chinese are Chins. Not that it matters a great deal to the Chinaman, as long as his shop or laundry is well patronized. But if it happens that he takes unto himself a Creole wife, she demands that he be addressed properly, in order to keep her own self-respect. However, there are some cases where the peculiarities, or through their relationships with the people, Chinese shopkeepers have become possessors of names which they bear proudly, feeling themselves now truly accepted. It was so in San Fernando, a thriving town 40 miles south of Port of Spain, where Old Man became as one of the community. He had a large shop, and soon after he opened business, he sent to China for help, and 2 countrymen came. Old Man used to sit on an empty saltfish barrel, clad in a dirty merino and a khaki pants, his wooden slippers so placed on the floor that he could slip into them at a moment's notice, and watch with satisfaction his assistants administering the business. Some customers, dissatisfied with the service they got, would refuse to buy any goods unless Old Man himself attended to them. After some time, the aged Chinaman got accustomed to this flattery, and he used to stay behind the shop, coming to the front only on special business or when his presence was really necessary. But his life was ebbing away. He used to go to Makurepo Street and smoke opium in a den behind a laundry every Saturday night. When the police raided the den, Old Man had no place else to go to immediately. He died one night, coughing in his sleep. His assistants closed the shop for a day, and after that, business went on as usual. But customers fell off after his death, and it was some time before the people in that part of the town got used to their assistants, though they never gave them any names. In Barataria, they began to call Tall Boy that from the very first, because he was tall and young. He had an almost Western face, his eyes didn't slant, and he spoke English in the same way as the working class, though he could read only a little. Tall Boy had been working as an assistant in Port of Spain for some years, and was well at home with the Trinidadians, even adopting some local habits and manners of speech. He moved into Barataria with a pregnant wife and 4 little boys with scarcely a year between each of them. Mary was doomed to be always with child when she married Tall Boy, but she was Chinese and accepted it. When the women in the village got to know her well, they said, "Is all this Tall Boy running you down so? He must be full of blood." In a week he was settled, leaning over the counter and chatting familiarly with all who came into the shop. In the shops, one does not ask for credit. It is trust. Trust me this and trust me that until payday. In every shop there is a crumpled exercise book in which the names of debtors are kept, and an account of how much money they owe. Most business is done on this system, and Tall Boy did not delay for a moment in offering to trust the customers. though behind their backs he did make discreet inquiries as to whether they were honest. Because most of the villagers came to buy their goods on a Saturday night, cluttering the shop and demanding attention at the same time, Tallboy requested that they hand in lists of what they wanted by Friday, so he could have them ready the next day. He stayed up late. His home was just back of the shop, the same building, and made up the goods, putting the parcels in empty carton boxes. He kept the slips of paper on a piece of pointed wire hung on a nail for easy reference. But despite this, every Saturday night the shop was crowded, and sometimes he had to shut the people in when it was time to close. Tallboy's children were a part of the shop. Those who were old enough to go to school hid about the house until it was too late. Mary, filled with child, would go out in the road, her wooden slippers cloppity-clopping on the gravel, and call, "Ling! Pee-wee! Achang!" And her voice went ringing in the neighborhood. Then, when schooltime was past, the boys crawled from under the counter, behind the sacks of rice and sugar, the barrels of pork and saltfish. All day long they roamed the shop, tumbling the tins of milk Tallboy lined neatly on the shelves, sitting on the counter and making ugly faces at the customers, getting in Tallboy's way so much that sometimes he had to lift them in his arms or pass them on to a woman customer. If Mary came to assist him, they held on to her skirt and followed her wherever she went. She and her husband petted the children extensively, yet with sudden anger would strike them, and when they burst out crying, the customers would cry, "Hush, hush," and play with their chubby cheeks. Every morning, other people's children passed the shop on their way to school, their slates and copybooks in satchels of colored cloth, walking in that sweet wonder of childhood, standing here to watch a donkey cart pass, stumbling on a stone and looking at it with amazement, walking zigzag or backwards in imitation of a driver, now on this side of the road, now on that, waiting impatiently for a small brother or sister who lingered and lagged, crying because it had to go to school. Every morning as they passed, they called out, "Pee-wee, come and go to school." But Pee-wee made them a monkey face and ran into the shop and hid behind the saltfish barrel. But when they had all gone, and no children came to the shop for message, and they were tired playing among themselves, they used to wander about school where all the other children were, and that part of the world around the grass-edged road. Soon they were being teased for not having trousers on, and when they clamored for more clothes, Mary knew it was high time she marched them off to school. She arranged with a neighbor for her children to take them as they passed the shop. The first morning she had them dressed, fidgeted in new trousers below their knees, and she locked them up in the house so they couldn't go in the shop. They went meekly enough, though Pee-wee hung back all the way, crying, and Ling had to hold his hand and drag him along. In Trinidad, one does not have to be a teacher or to be in possession of special qualifications to open up a kindergarten. All that is needed is a room in which to hold a class, a blackboard, a few benches and desks. There were 6 of these kindergartens in Barataria, where the majority of people sent the children until they were old enough to attend the government school near the Eastern Main Road. It was a means of getting them out of the way for some time, so that domestic chores could be done in peace. Many middle-class people sent their children to these schools. The school which Tallboy's children attended was a popular one, it being in 7th Street, about midway in the village. It was under a house, the dwelling itself being more than 6 feet above the ground, and the walls were nailed loosely together. So the children used to peep through the chinks to see who was passing outside when the teacher wasn't looking. The teacher was a Negro woman, a little past her youth, but still going strong, entertaining American servicemen in the night to augment her earnings. She lived with her grandmother. Every morning she sat on the floor in front of her grandmother, who combed her hair. She was always going to iron her hair to make it straight, like white people or Indian people. In the gallery where they sat, the sun would cast rays, and she would bask in the early warmth, feeling lazy to go and teach the children their ABC, her great legs flat on the floor, her hands pressing down the front of her dress between her legs, so nobody passing in the road could see anything. And the children pushing the gate after passing over the plank of wood with which she had bridged the canal would say, "Good morning, miss," just as she had trained them. Good morning, children. John, what you bring for teacher today, eh? A mango? Don't make too much noise in the yard, and don't get your clothes dirty. School will call just now." Henry was the eldest boy in the class. He was of age to attend the government school, but he dreaded it, and screamed whenever Rita suggested it. He was also the most mischievous and disobedient. He never said "Miss" when he said "Good morning." Once the teacher asked him why, and he said, "My mother say it's enough to say good morning, that I ain't bound to say miss too." Having put away his book and slate, he set about drawing rude pictures of boys and girls on the wall in the back with chalk he had stolen from Miss. He had already beaten all the children. There was no one to fight. He could pitch marbles better than any of the boys. He encouraged them to wring buttons off their blouses and pants to play with. The morning the Chinese children came to school, he ganged up the rest against them. When it was recess, a mid-morning break of 10 or 15 minutes, they gathered around the Chinese and sang, "Chinese, Chinese, never die, flat nose and chinky eye." But Ling was no coward, even though Henry was bigger than he. He put his hands to his ears and shut out their voices. Then he sang, "Nigger is a nation, they full of botheration. Meet them by the station, they stink with perspiration." Then he turned to the Indians. "Everybody know all you does use a bottle of water in the WC. Aha! Chinese does eat cat and dog. Nigger does smell stink with perspiration. And coolie does eat with their hands." It became a general shouting fray. Everybody put their hands to their ears to express indifference to what the others said. A white-skinned girl, dressed neatly with a blue ribbon in her hair, was called Whitey Cockroach. She retorted, "Black tar baby." "Don't make so much noise," Miss called from a window above. "Henry, as sure as you start it, just wait till I come down and cut a switch from the hibiscus fence." After the first week, Tallboy's children refused to be taken by anybody. They wanted to go and come by themselves. Mary cautioned them to keep to the left side of the road and allowed them to have their own way. But just because they didn't have to, they went and came back with the other children. After another week, it was one day in school and the next in the shop. Ling would say he had fallen and hurt his knee and couldn't walk, and Pee-wee and a Chong refused to go without him. Only the threat of medicine could make them snatch their satchels, or if Tallboy began to take off his belt in a threatening gesture. It was not long before Tallboy went to Port of Spain and obtained a license from the police to sell spirituous liquors. He knew there could never be too many rum shops in the village. He extended the counter and opened a bar. It was successful from the first day. News of this latest item now being sold in the shop spread through the village, and men deserted their favorite bars to try out Tallboy's. On 2 stools and soap boxes they sat. The bar became a place of rest and gossip and firing one. Tallboy and Mary were busy from the shop to bar. Especially on a Saturday night, laborers would come in from the fields and get together, and if things waxed warm, they sang calypsos and made a lot of noise after Tallboy closed the shop. He had to coax them away or refuse to sell any more rum before they left. On a Sunday, the shop was closed, and Tallboy pottered about the yard, mending his fowl coop or cooking a good Chinese lunch. But even on that day of rest, housewives who had forgotten to buy salt or onions went around to the back of the shop and pounded loudly on the galvanized sheets nailed to the gate. Tallboy would send one of the children to see who it was, though he knew he would have to go look himself. "Look, Tallboy, I forget to get salt, man. Reach a pound for me now." Or somebody had run short of rum or wanted a bottle because friends had dropped in unexpectedly. So accustomed was he to these interruptions that he built a shelf at the back of the shop and stored a quantity of goods, including a case of rum. "Put it in your pocket. Don't let policeman see you," he cautioned as he slipped the bottle wrapped in newspapers through a small opening in the gate. He usually made a little profit on Sundays by selling underweight or mixing water with the rum, but he felt justified in that he was taking a chance against the law, and besides, no one stood up to argue or check their parcels. But, on the whole, he treated his customers fairly, and even generously at times, so that business was prospering and he was thinking of extending his premises. Obliquely opposite to the shop, on a rich plot of land with a mango tree which the children stoned when it was in fruit, Otto, another Chinaman, had a parlor where he sold sweets, aerated drinks, bread, and cakes. Otto had a baby face and a forehead which went back until it met closely cropped, straight black hair. Otto smoked opium in Port of Spain. He was listless and dull, and attracted very little business, though his was the only well-stocked parlor in that part of Barataria, with enough room for him to have a few tables with chairs. The only thing Otto might have sold often was Snowball, but Otto was too lazy to shave the ice. All day long he lay on a bed in an adjoining room with the door open. He ignored customers when he saw them with a glass or jug. He knew they wanted Snowball and rolled over, turning his back to the door and pretending to be fast asleep. Early every morning, a boy from the bakery near San Juan delivered fresh breads and cakes. Otto put these in the front of the glass case to make a good show, and sold the stale ones from the day before. Sometimes he shut the parlor and went into Port of Spain when the urge for opium was too strong, and when the boy came to deliver the cakes, or the truck brought ice from Port of Spain, there was no one to receive them. Otto eventually employed a small boy from the village to work in the parlor. The boy shaved ice furiously, and for a week the Snowball sale soared. He sold all the fresh bread and cakes and left the stale ones. Otto sent the boy back home and went to sleep. When Otto was awake, he usually managed to sit down behind the counter and look over the road into Tallboy's shop until noon. He read newspapers from China, which he got from friends in Port of Spain. He visited Tallboy occasionally, or Tallboy came over to ask how business was going. Tallboy's desire was to acquire Otto's parlor, lock, stock, and barrel, at as low a price as possible. When he suggested that Otto wasn't doing well and should try his luck in the city, the sleepy-eyed, baby-faced Chinaman shook his head. He knew he would have to clear out, but it was not good business to agree with the suggestion. Tallboy did not persist. He only kept an eye on Otto, and one morning he observed that business was slacking off too much, that perhaps he had better not invest in the parlor after all. Otto took alarm, and seeing this, Tallboy drove a hard bargain, saying that most of the goods in the shop were spoiled and old, and that he did not like the idea of losing money. He had many children to bring up. In the end, Otto quit the district and bought a share in a Chinese restaurant in the city. Tallboy lost no time in taking down the sign over the entrance and putting up a new one, proclaiming that the parlor was now his. He wrote on the wall with a piece of chalk, "No idlers allowed." He stepped back, looked at his handiwork, and shook his head. He rubbed out the writing and wrote, "Idlers, keep out." He was busy to keep sales moving in both places. If he saw anyone going into the parlor, he shouted, "I'm coming now!" And calling out to Mary to attend in the shop, he ran across the road. This could not go on for any length of time. He was planning to move over all his stock and have the bar, shop, and parlor in one, as Otter's place was much bigger. But he decided for the time being that Mary and whichever of the children managed to stay away from school should remain in the parlor. Tallboy made fun with all the girls and young women in the village, even when Mary was present. She never paid any attention to him laughing and leaning over the counter to touch their bodies. He told them, smiling, that he was going to sleep with them that night, and they said, "But this Tallboy too freshy. You're too fast with yourself." When Mary was in the parlor, he held their hands or commented on their figures, and in the bar he said to the men, "That is a good one to sleep with." And when the men laughed because they knew he was harmless. If the girls got angry, he asked them if they couldn't take a joke. "Do, you know it's only joke I'm making. Come, what it is you want? Butter? No butter this week. No salt fish either." The scales in the shop served a variety of purposes. Besides weighing the goods he sold, it also balanced fish, chickens, vegetables, and even babies. Newlyborns were taken to the shop to be weighed. With much ceremony, Tallboy would spread a clean sheet of paper and slip the pound along the notches. "That is a good weight," he would admit. "But even Pee-wee weighed more than he was born." When fish or chicken vendors passed and the villagers bought, they never trusted the weight until it was confirmed on Tallboy's scales. One morning, there was great excitement in Barataria. Tallboy got up and discovered that the shop had been broken into and a quantity of goods stolen. He spread the alarm, and 2 policemen came on bicycles from San Juan and took down a lot of notes in their books. Afterwards, they went in the bar and had a drink. The whole neighborhood sympathized with Tallboy. Business continued as usual, but everyone had suggestions to offer. Thieves had been prowling around in the nights lately, but Tallboy was such a good man. He had done nobody wrong. It was a shame. In the evening, he became reconciled, his mind warm with the concern of his neighbors. But with Mary, it was a different thing. She wanted to know what the police were going to do about it, and how long it would take to bring the thieves to justice. She said they had better get a carpenter to reinforce all the doors in the parlor, so when they moved over, no one would be tempted to break in. This Tallboy did, supervising the work himself. One of the neighbors suggested that he get 2 big dogs, and as soon as he could, he went to San Juan and procured 2 ferocious-looking animals from a hunter who assured him they would make good watchdogs. The police never caught the thief or thieves, and after a few days, the incident was forgotten, and Tallboy was ready to move over. Aware of the housing shortage, he planned to divide the shop into rooms and let them out. All the villagers wanted to move in, so he became choosy, looking around for a decent middle-class family. When one came, he changed his mind and said he wanted only a couple, no children, and 6 months' rent in advance to put in good flooring and paint the rooms. 2 businessmen from San Juan offered to buy the premises, but Tallboy was too smart to allow competition in the area if he could help it. It was Joe Martin who got a tenant for him. Joe said it was a friend who was catching hell with some neighbors in Laventil, and who was willing to throw in a little reward together with the 6 months' rent. Tallboy agreed, and Joe got the money for him. Once the money was in the hands of Tallboy, he didn't really care who came to live in the shop. In order not to lose any business, he decided to move over during a weekend. From the Saturday night, he began taking over things himself, bit by bit, and all the children helped, and a few neighbors. Next morning, a truck arrived, and the bulk of his stock was transported. The driver just backed the truck across the road up from the parlor and said it was the shortest trip he had ever taken. Tallboy cut down his expense by offering the driver and loaders a drink. They drank a bottle and went away with another and $3 for the job, which was a good deal. Once settled in his new quarters, Tallboy reckoned his assets and liabilities and, checking on those who owed him, announced that too many people were reducing the amounts they paid. He sat up one night and put the account book in order. He gathered all the slips of paper and sat down at the counter. He ticked here and there and grumbled now and again at an account long overdue. Joe Martin owed him $20 for rum alone. Tiger hadn't paid last week. And yes, his wife had taken 6 pounds of flour that morning, and he had forgotten to mark it. "Mary," he called, "anybody take anything and you forget to mark it?" Mary came, and together they went over the accounts. Tallboy was satisfied with his profits. He could send more money home to China. Mary wanted a new dress, but she had got one just 6 months ago. That could wait. He looked down at the khaki pants he wore. It had given him a year's constant service with 2 others. Tallboy was no miser, but he believed in cutting down expenses to a minimum. For one thing, he didn't need any clothes right now. He had had a suit cut on the latest American lines by a popular tailor in Port of Spain, which he sometimes wore on a Sunday when friends visited them. But apart from another tweed suit, it was regrettable that he had to travel once a week on business. That was all he felt need for. Khaki pants and white merino, just as most of the shopkeepers in the island wore enough for him. The clothes could wait. The children, he didn't have immediate plans for the future. The main thing was to have money for them when they grow up to open their own businesses. They could wait. But he had to pay the carpenter, and flour and rice were running low. And Mary was going to have another baby soon. He had heard how Rita delivered her miller's baby, though she was no midwife. Perhaps she would help them when Mary's time came. It was worth a try anyway. He would speak to Joe when next he came into the bar about the money he owed, and perhaps they could make a deal. And about the money Tiger owed, he would threaten not to pay for the milk if Tiger did not put something against the account. $50 worth of goods went in the robbery. There was no way of getting it back. He would have to count it as a loss. It was a good thing he kept his money locked up in the house. He switched off the lights after making sure that all the doors were properly bolted. End of chapter 4.